Due Process, awarded the 2005 New York Emmy for Societal Concerns Programming.
As I act on a daily basis, I always keep in mind that I'm a temporary custodian of power. That's it.
He's been the state's top law enforcer for 3 years of praise and criticism. Now, with a new governor about to take the State House, the Attorney General will be leaving. How does he see both his controversial tenure and the state of justice in New Jersey? A half hour with Peter Harvey on this special edition of Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process provided by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law, and by the Fund for New Jersey, a private foundation focusing on New Jersey public policy issues. Additional funding provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual and online legal reference, elaw.com.
Has any Attorney General been more criticized or more praised, more at odds with more than one governor, more embattled after 3 years than Peter Harvey? I'm Raymond Brown.
And I'm Sandy King, and on this special edition of Due Process, another of our periodic conversations with the Attorney General, this time as he prepares to leave office. Peter Harvey, welcome again to Due Process. You have been damned and praised. Your detractors say you've been soft on political corruption. Your supporters say there's never been an Attorney General as independent, as uninterested in political matters. How does Peter Harvey judge his 3 years as he is about to leave?
You know, the danger of passing judgment on oneself is that it is infused with ego. And I don't really care how it is perceived. What we try to do very hard is to make the department, the office, all 10 divisions relevant to ordinary people.
But are you satisfied with the way you've done your job?
Yeah. Of course. That doesn't mean that everything that I've done I've been happy with, or that I've reached every issue that I've wanted to reach. But when we look at the record, the objective facts, it's pretty clear that we have made this office productive. We have been the national leader in a number of categories. We have won praise nationally and statewide. And more importantly, we have brought new hope to people who've been left out of government and who have been forgotten in our cities and in our communities, whether it's environmental, whether it's public corruption, whether it's homeland security, whether it's racial profiling training, whether it's anti-gangs. We've started a statewide conversation on gangs, which wasn't occurring in this state prior to 2002.
Your voice as an important person in this state may never be louder than it is now, and it's an opportunity to exercise maybe some of the things you've been thinking about and learn. Now, Justice Coleman joined us, and interestingly enough, talked about his personal views on the death penalty, which is always an interesting place to start because we've covered the death penalty in New Jersey extensively. Now that you've been in office and you're about to leave it and been in the chief law enforcement office in the state, what's your position on the death penalty?
Well, as you know, I've defended a number of death penalty appeals before the Supreme Court and intermediate appellate courts in the state. I think the time has come for us to really examine the continuing utility or lack thereof of the death penalty. Very soon I'm going to be issuing death penalty guidelines that have come about as a result of my discussions with the 21 county prosecutors.
What kind of, you say examine the utility of the death penalty?
Well, no one has been put to death in this state for 30 years, and judging the opinions that have been issued by not only our Supreme Court, but the Third Circuit Court of Appeals and the district courts, it doesn't look like there is a willingness to impose it in the future. That's not a criticism, it's an observation. My view is that I think that we need to look at whether or not the death penalty ought to be abolished in this state, go to a life without parole formulation.
Does that mean yet another study, or does that mean that you're prepared right now to say we need to end the death penalty in New Jersey?
I don't know if I'm prepared to say that we need to end it. I suppose if I had my own way, I would end it. And I would go to life without parole.
Would you call on the legislature to do that?
I would, but I approach it from the standpoint of the victims. It is very difficult. You know, murder creates a generational ripple effect in a family among the survivors of the person who has been murdered. There is nothing more difficult than to keep coming to court, trial after trial, hearing after hearing, appeal after appeal, and you're being told that the person who killed your loved one is going to die, then they're not going to die, then they're going to die, then they're not going to die. It's a stress on a lot of victims that they don't deserve. And it may be just more direct and more forthright to just say, we're not going to have the death penalty, but we're going to have life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. I can tell you this, I think part of living in hell means a place of remembrance. I think living in a cell for the rest of your natural life until you die is a lot of punishment.
Has it been tough on you to prosecute death cases, given what is apparently your own disfavor with the idea of capital punishment?
No, because the law is written as it is, and so I enforce the law as written. That's the oath I took. And I'm going to enforce the law as long as it is written in the form in which it is. Until the legislature changes it, I'm going to argue in favor of every death penalty case.
But you would urge them now to go the other way?
I would.
Right, given your unwillingness to talk about yourself, that's a challenge for us to come back and look at it again. How can you not look at the irony and have some observation about the fact that you have in fact been criticized, on the one hand, as a person who was oblivious to political reality and unwilling to cooperate effectively politically with two governors, on the other hand, a person who showed political favor by bringing what's been called a relatively small number of political corruption cases compared to Christie? You don't see some irony in being the person who has faced both of those criticisms for the same tenure?
Well, no, I don't. And let me take the latter part first. The people who utter that criticism don't ever print the facts. The fact of the matter is we have prosecuted over 120 public officials. Now, nobody will ever print that because it doesn't support their ridiculous argument. You can't name an attorney general in this state who's prosecuted 30, 50, 75. We have. And we started from nothing. In 2001, the Division of Criminal Justice brought 6 public corruption cases against 6 defendants. In 1 year, we brought 15 against over 25.
But you know the charge always is that these are small-time people.
Well, that always...
And that you've not done, again, the comparison to Chris Christie. Do you mind that comparison?
No, I don't at all.
Is it fair, because you usually come down on the losing side when we see that in the press?
I really don't come down on the losing side. I do with respect to opinions. I don't when you do a side-by-side comparison. The Star-Ledger did one, and I think what it showed was we had 100 less investigators and had more cases. And so the argument shifted from we didn't do any to we didn't do the big ones. Then we prosecuted a sitting assemblyman. No other attorney general in this state has done it. We successfully did it. Nobody said anything about that. We also have brought cases against people in state government, people outside of state government. They said we didn't do mayors. We did a mayor down in Hainesport who embezzled over $300,000 from a town. They said, yeah, but you only did one. See, here is the ridiculousness of the argument. The standard keeps moving. When someone says you don't do enough, ask them what is enough. Ask them to set a bar. Every time someone sets the bar or the standard, we exceed it. We don't just meet it, we exceed it. What's the standard? And see, this is the same kind of foolishness that informs literacy tests that were abolished. Well, you don't interpret the Constitution well enough to be able to vote. I come from Alabama where this kind of test was imposed. And the standard keeps moving.
Well, I know that you believe in the First Amendment, but what's the animus behind what you seem to perceive as an unfair criticism of your office compared to Christie on public corruption and to some extent in terrorism? Why do you think that's being done?
I haven't heard.
What has given rise to that?
I haven't heard it in terrorism. And in fact, I'd be surprised because really the Homeland Security apparatus is mostly on the state level when you go through the 50 states. Oh, I don't know. Who cares? You want to know something? Someone who criticizes me, at the end of the day, here's their reality. When they wake up in the morning, I'm still the Attorney General. When I wake up in the morning, I'm still the Attorney General. Tell you something else, too. What somebody believes about me is their business, not mine. My ego isn't so fragile that I need approval from some of these people who couldn't even tell you half the divisions that are in the Department of Law and Public Safety.
General, let's talk about Homeland Security. We've just recently seen the 9/11 Commission come down and say, you know, this country isn't any safer than it was before 9/11, than it was before our report. Can you really say that New Jersey is safer?
Yeah, we are safer than we were on September 11, 2001. Well, for one, we've been working over the past 3 years to help government develop best practices for safety and security. Same thing for private industry. I chair the Domestic Security Preparedness Task Force that is made up of cabinet-level officials, but there's also a component called the Infrastructure Advisory Committee. It is made up of 20 industry sector groups. We have gone about the task of having these 20 industry sectors, chemical, pharmaceutical, telecommunications, transportation, food sector, develop best security practices. Some have to do with the interior security practices of a facility. Do they give people badges? Do they escort them when they come to visit the facility? If the level goes up to orange, who do you allow into your parking lot? What do you do with packages? Do you screen them on site? Do you screen them off site? A lot of these procedures have been developed by private industry in collaboration with government. Also buffer zone protection. A lot of companies are now beginning to analyze how they protect their facilities from intrusion, and you see the effects of that. After the scare with the Prudential building in Newark, Prudential put steel bollards outside of their facility so you can't drive a car or truck off the broad street and into the lobby of their building.
One of the areas that we knew we were vulnerable in was the port. You've been here and told us that the port was a priority of yours. Any safer there?
It is, but we have limited jurisdiction. The port is controlled by the federal government. Customs and Immigration Enforcement really covers the port facility. We have jurisdiction once a truck leaves the port facility, but the Coast Guard really patrols the area in the water outside of the port, and with the port itself, it's covered by the Customs House. Now, we've met with them, along with, when I say them, we've met with Customs. I hosted a meeting with Customs, as well as the Port Authority, to talk about better security procedures. But it comes down to money. If we really want safer port facilities, we're going to have to put in more screening machines and more customs agents.
Let me turn
to screen the cargo.
To another issue that's of great concern and was a focus at the time you came into office, and that's racial profiling. Mm-hmm. In terms of the occurrence of racial profiling and the measures in place to limit it and sanction those who engage in it, where are we now as compared to when you took office?
Well, I can tell you this. We're the first state and only state in the nation to have racial profiling training that's mandatory for every police officer in the state. The reason that's significant is most citizens encounter local police departments long before they'll ever encounter a county or state police outfit, and that's just the reality. We prepared and developed a 3-hour training program that's on DVD and VHS with an accompanying test and text, and we mandated that every police officer in the state be trained on racial profiling. We're still the only state to have done that, and we did it as a result of a directive that I issued. Also, with respect to the state police, I think the monitor's reports over the last 3 years speak for themselves. They have credited the state police with making remarkable progress and extraordinary advancements in both the way in which citizens are treated and the way in which they do their jobs. I can safely say that racial profiling is a thing of the past.
It's a thing of the past.
Certainly with respect to the division of state police, there are still areas of concern and work that have to be done with local police departments.
That deep-seated culture of bias that was in the state police, you're convinced it is gone.
I know it. You got to remember, half the troopers who are in the outfit right now in the Division of State Police were trained under the consent decree. We have a colonel who is committed to equal treatment and also committed to a diverse force. We have commanders. I've met with them. I know them, who are committed to not only diversity in their command staffs, but also diversity in recruiting. So we know that it is a thing of the past. Listen, we still live in a country where people harbor the views that they harbor. You will never have in any organization people who are devoid of prejudice, whether it's based on race, gender, sexual orientation, whether it's based on religion. You're always going to have people. I don't care about somebody's views. I do care about their conduct. And as we measure their conduct, and we have systems in place to measure their conduct, we have systems that allow us to intervene if somebody is misbehaving out there.
I think that there are a fair number of folks who would be shocked, though, to believe that, in fact, the state police issue with respect to profiling is a dead issue and that we're not going to revisit that again.
Let me tell you why I think they would be afraid to do that. Is because there are some people who don't believe in tomorrow. There are some people who are so imprisoned by the past and their own views about someone. You know, one of the things that I like about a tailor, I can't afford suits that much these days, but one of the things I love about a tailor is that every time you go, you get remeasured. Unfortunately, we don't do that with one another as human beings. We don't remeasure ourselves. What we do is we get trapped in a various mindset about an organization or about a person, and we don't allow ourselves to escape from it. And what I'm telling you is, don't take my word for it. Go look at the reports issued by the court-appointed independent monitors who come in every quarter and review hundreds of videotapes and audio recordings to evaluate the conduct of troopers on the road. And what they have said is that there is no evidence of profiling, no evidence of race-based stops on the highways and byways of New Jersey.
General, let's go beyond who gets stopped on the New Jersey Turnpike and who doesn't, and talk about something that you've talked about before, and that is racial bias in the criminal justice system. Any progress there, any hope of progress? And as you leave, is there anything that you would ask the new governor, the legislature, to do to make a difference?
Well, I think we need a better effort on diversity among the judiciary. It would be helpful. I think that's one measure. We issued a directive recently, a directive that said that juveniles who were arrested for minor offenses for the first time would receive a station house adjustment, meaning they would not be locked up as a first resort.
Whether they were black or white. You know, Raymond's father often says how amazing it is that there aren't any white juvenile criminals in Essex County, because when you go to the youth house, they're certainly not there.
Well, one thing is for sure, a person's access to justice should not be based upon economics or geography.
Or race, and yet you know that that's how the system works.
Well, there are times when people bring their biases to a particular profession. So we issued a directive that said there will be a station house adjustment program. It will have certain principles and guidelines. It will be statewide. Every police department must implement it. And every police department that implements it must submit quarterly reports to the county prosecutor so we can measure what's going on. So part of our problem now is we don't have any data because no records are being kept. So juveniles who are arrested for minor infractions as their first offense are going to get their parents called, guardians or caregiver called, and it's going to build a relationship between the police officer and the parent, guardian or caregiver. And what we hope is that this is an extension of community policing. We think it will empower parents in a way they have not been empowered before, because the parent's going to leave there with a detective's card, and the kid's going to be told, if you give your mom any trouble, your mom's going to call me, and I'm coming at you.
But going beyond juvenile and going beyond judges, is there any other area that, as you leave, you would ask the state government to change?
Well, there are a number of areas that I think we have to look at. One is we really have to examine seriously mandatory minimum sentences, because, and the school zone law, which is 1,000 foot, as you know. One of the reasons I think we have to is that there certain cities in which you will stand, and you will never be out of a school zone. And you can stand in rural areas, in suburban areas, and be out of a school zone, which means this. If you possess the same amount of controlled substance in a suburban area or rural area as somebody in a city, you will face a different penalty simply based upon geography. And that is not the way it ought to be.
But dealing with the size of a school zone, which is important, can be important, but it's tweaking. I mean, when we started...
I'm not arguing the size of the school zone only. I'm saying mandatory minimum. The problem with the school zone law is that it gives, and all other mandatory minimum sentences of its ilk, is that it doesn't give judges the ability to judge.
But we have an entire system that's an offense-based, determinate system. It is essentially a given offense should produce a sentence that's within a range that the judge doesn't have very much power over, and that was designed to produce uniformity and to reduce any discriminatory effect. It hasn't measurably changed the racial makeup of our prison system.
No,
the question is, where is that happening, and what are the things that we should be looking at as a state to try to change that?
I think we need to examine the question of mandatory minimums. I think, listen, we insist that before judges get on the Superior Court bench, they have 10 years of experience. We insist that they be people of good judgment and wisdom and balance and demeanor. Well, there's a reason why we want that, so that they can make informed decisions about things like sentencing. But once we put them there, we take away all their discretion to make informed decisions that are tailored to a person's individual circumstances. I think we need to rethink all of these mandatory minimum sentences. It doesn't mean we eliminate them all. It may mean we eliminate most.
Let me ask you about another area in which you might be able to influence the governor who is leaving, Cody, and that is in the area of clemency. Are there any cases that you've looked at? We've looked again and again at cases like the case of Bobby Cumber, a very minor figure in the Marshall murder for hire case, whose trial judge says he perhaps never should have even gone to prison. Are you prepared to ask Governor Cody, as you both are leaving, to grant clemency to a Bobby Cumber, to some of the drug people who are in for years for something like marijuana? Any of those cases that you're prepared to throw down on?
I don't think governors listen to attorneys general when it comes to clemency decisions. Based upon my discussions, my own experience in my discussions with attorneys general throughout the country, I think governors make those decisions based upon what they think they ought to do. Sometimes it's political, sometimes it's not.
We have an attorney general who has probably the most criminal justice power or responsibility of any in the country.
Yes, but no clemency jurisdiction whatsoever.
Wouldn't it be wise for a governor to at least take into account the attorney general's position in the state of New Jersey on the question of clemency?
Sure, if the governor wished for that input.
If the governor doesn't want the input, are you prepared to say, Governor, you may not want to hear this, but these are the people whom I think you should consider for clemency?
I might.
You might.
I might.
We're getting close.
True. There's still more time. There's always tomorrow.
Have you looked at the Bobby Cumber case? How do you feel about that?
We've looked at it in a very cursory way. I don't know the details about it sufficient to have an intelligent conversation with you about it now. But we may make some recommendations to the governor about some people whom we think ought to be considered for clemency.
Let me ask you about a key recommendation.
Sure.
As you leave office, what's the most important single recommendation you would make to your successor, whether he's open to it or not, that he ought to know about, or she?
I'd make two.
Okay.
One is be independent and make your own decisions based upon what you believe is right.
Has that worked out well for you?
It has. It really has. Because
is there a tremendous pressure not to do that?
Well, let me put it this way. You get a lot of heat for not doing it, because while everyone argues you ought to be independent, some of the same people argue that you're not being a team player, whatever that means. The second thing I would do is continue the focus on proactive law enforcement, particularly education in high schools and middle schools, and with after-school programs. I think that we have to treat crime in this state, particularly gangs, as a public health problem and not keep responding to these issues in a reactive way. We seem to want to respond after the fact and lock everybody up. We're not going to build enough jails to lock everybody up, and I got news for you. They're coming out over the next 5 years, 70,000 inmates are coming out of New Jersey's prisons.
This is the last time that we will talk to Peter Harvey as Attorney General, though we trust not the last time he'll be here on Due Process. Peter, we hope to see you again often on Due Process, and we wish you luck with what comes next.
Well, thank you.
But for now, that's it for this edition of Due Process. Our thanks to Peter Harvey for being here and to all of you for watching. Till next time, for Sandy and all of us here, I'm Raymond Brown for Due Process.
Attorney General. This is something to do with the court system?
Do I know his name? Not a clue.
Peter Harvey.
He's in charge of the ACLU.
New Jersey Attorney General, that's the guy who oversees the school district. I believe his name is Cunningham.
I assume that he handles the government cases in New Jersey.
Paul Harvey, he's in charge of doing all of the investigations.
I'm assuming he enforces laws that are based in the state.
Got a big job. He's a very important man.
He's appointed by the governor.
Oh, he's supposed to watch for the rights of the people.
Major funding for Due Process provided by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law, and by the Fund for New Jersey, a private foundation focusing on New Jersey public policy issues. Additional funding provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual and online legal reference, elaw.com.